Afternoon, everyone. How are you all doing out there? Welcome to part number 5 of this wonderful tutorial series, and let's transition over there so you can actually see me. Oh, webcam's looking... it keeps resetting the white balance, doesn't it? Let me try and fix that. The stupid webcam, it keeps trying to set the white balance back to auto, and it's never clever enough to do that. So let me try and do it again. Oh, but then that makes it even more red, which is even weirder. Okay, that's quite strange. We'll go with that, I guess. We'll go with that today. I don't know. It's not supposed to be red though. That's the thing. It's supposed to be quite yellow. Let me see if I can change the LifeX bulbs to be a different colour. No, I don't want a fade off. That's not the profile. Like that there, those are supposed to be yellow. I can see them, they are definitely yellow. And yet, for some reason, it thinks they are slightly pinkish. Oh, polka dots! Holy shit. Just noticed. What? Did it not play? What the heck is going on with Streamlabs? Did Streamlabs not play that announcement? That's weird. Why the hell did that not do that then? Hang on. That is layout number 1. And that's Streamlabs. Why did that not play out? Popped up, didn't play the audio. Huh. That's strange. Let me see if I can replay that. Because it should have played out the audio. No, I don't want to down. Oh, go away. Why have you changed the link position? Stop changing the link position, Streamlabs. It's so stupid. Thank you for the 5 gift subs, though, Pokenuts. It's humongously generous. Going there to Big Matt Hawk, Dupless, Meme PG, Hodders, and Regnar. Let me see if we can replay that alert. I should be able to do that. Pokenuts has gifted. Right, well, it doesn't look like I can replay the full thing, but I can replay each individual event. Let's just see if that works. That definitely played out. I think I just had the audio source muted on my end. And also, when I'm not using headphones, I don't actually hear the alerts going off because they're just going through a virtual channel. But I'm still playing through all through of them, all 5 of them through, so that you at least get to hear them. It's only fair that you do. For all those gifted subs. All 5 of them. And there they are. Oh yes, and the hard disk does like to eat up a lot when it starts up Unity. It does a lot of caching stuff. But thank you, Pokenuts. Greatly appreciated for those 5 subs. You gifted a lot of subs over to Quizzy Dan as well, so that's a lot of gift subs you've been giving out today. But yes, welcome to Unity Tutorial Series, the part of the 5th generation it is. So last time, as you can see on my screen, we were messing around with timers and things. So we have various different, we went through different ways of representing time. Went through if you wanted to do time increasing, whether you want to do time decreasing, whether you want to have it display just seconds and partial seconds, just whole seconds, minutes and seconds, whether you want to have a display, and we got to this point where we actually also had it play a sound for every second that passes, and the pitch of that sound increases over the time as well. So you get this rising ticker effect. And then yes, this here, the fill is assigned relative to the remaining amount of time. So we pretty much did everything timer related. All right, catch you later. Thank you very much. Catch you later, Quizzy Dan. So yeah, that was what we got up to last time with the timers, and we even had dollar timer as well. So if you wanted to tick down some points value over time rather than just an actual number of seconds, we did that as well. So we literally did everything, everything you could conceivably think about doing with the timer in the last stream. So if you did miss that, then catch up on part 4, and yeah, you'll obviously be able to do whatever you want with timers in the future. However, tonight or this afternoon or this morning or whatever time it is currently for you now, we're going to be looking back again at some questions controls. So we're looking more at the hard data stuff rather than visual fanciness. So you imagine a lot of quiz shows and game shows that have a lot of questions in a database, and so I mean the way we've got it doing that kind of thing at the moment, we've got the assets, so we can create our own separate assets for each question, which that works out quite nice, but does end up getting a bit convoluted and just a bit heavy-handed when you've got a lot of questions to deal with, because then suddenly you have a separate file for every question. That just seems a bit just overbearing, just a bit too much. So one thing we could do is we could improve this scriptable object so that instead of this asset being just one question, it could instead be a set of questions, so a question bank, as it were. So you can in theory have a question bank that is just a particular round, or you can have a question bank that is a particular category, or whatever you feel like you could do with a particular question bank, a set of questions. Then you can do that and have that as one asset. Then you can just drop that entire asset in and then start doing stuff with the questions. So let's do that first. Let's go back to where we were with questions. So this was the script we had before, this public class question class. And it is a scriptable object, as it is there derives from scriptable object. And it was very simple. It's just a question text and an answer text. That's all it ever needed. We actually don't even need those 2 lines at the front there, because it doesn't even use those. So that was just a simple question asset. So what we can do now is change this slightly so that it's now a question bank. So to do that, first of all, we're going to change the name of this to say that the class name is question bank. And we're also going to change the name of the file so that it matches that. With some classes, it doesn't have to match. However, with components and I believe scriptable objects, they do have to match the names. So let me just quickly change that. So now question.cs becomes question bank .cs. I'm pressing the F2 key there to do the rename operation. Whatever particular OS you're on, there may be different ways of doing that. Sometimes you can do a long press click to do a rename, a bit like that as well, but I use F2 because it's a keyboard shortcut. So question bank, scriptable object. We'll rename this to say that the default file name is going to be a question bank, and the menu name is going to appear as question the space bank. So this is what you will see on the create asset menu. We'll have an entry called question bank now. And then you got this stuff here, which is question text, accent text. We will sort that out in a moment, because what you can do is you can have a scriptable object have multiple different classes or objects in them from different classes. Like string is technically a class in a sort of way. It's a intrinsic, it's sort of a internal type that's just prevalent throughout the language, but it is technically a class in a way, even if it's a bit, you know, yes and no. It will have confused the references that we had earlier, Matt, yes. So if you were to go back to the editor now, then you'll find those two assets that we had before will probably have no reference anymore, and it just doesn't know what to do. That, and also any references we had earlier to the question box, that's going to be confused as well, because we haven't fixed its typing yet. So we get to those sort of one step at a time. If you needed to keep the original type, then obviously you could instead create a new class file with question bank in it and then start moving stuff over. I'm just overwriting them because this was fairly simple and we only had 2 questions to work with. However, if you've got more there that you don't want to get rid of, then yeah, you'll want to do it a different way around. But I'm just repurposing what we have with this and starting to change it up. Anyway, so yeah, we can have different classes. So like these 2 things, hello Whiskers, so these 2 things together here are still kind of, you know, they still want to be together in some way in a question. We just want this question bank to be a lot of these. I mean, you could cheat this, you could do this in a very sort of disgusting way and do question 1 text, question 2 text, question 3 text, so on, and do this. But as you can see, it's a bit time consuming and a bit sort of messy as well, because like we're going to have to keep adding fields for every different question and answer, which is, and as Yellowtail is saying, copy pasting is also a sign of bad coding generally. So we're not going to do that because we can do it a better way. We can do it sort of in 2 ways actually. It's not time for your treats yet, okay? It's not time for your treats yet. There we go. So we do it 1 in 2 ways. First one is going to actually add a class down here in the same file. So as long as the class that matches the name is the first class in the file, then that's fine. You can actually add more than 1 class in a file. So what I'm going to do is below this, I'm going to introduce a new class. I'm going to call it a public class question. Now this time it does not have to be a scriptable object, because we'll be able to get it serialized in a different way instead. So public class question, not deriving from anything special, and also we're not adding this tag thing at the top either of this particular class. I'm going to move these 2 fields into there, so I'm doing a cut and paste operation. So now a question, which is what we did have before in essence, has a question text and an answer text. So I'm just sort of moving this around, moving this into a different class called public class question. But there is one thing missing that I haven't added yet to make this work. To make this question work as a serializable class, that is to say one that can be loaded and saved to and from a file, I have to indicate to the language that it can be serialized. So to do that, we will need one of these kind of tags again. So we're going to open up a square bracket and we are going to do serializable. And as you'll see, it doesn't quite know what that is, because it's actually in a namespace. So I'm going to just add in that namespace at the top. So we're going to be using system That's the namespace we need. So make sure you have using system at the top here in the first set of code here for the different using statements. And then serializable with a Z, no extra E in the middle there, but the E at the end. And that is a tag, a attribute that tells the language and also Unity as well. Excuse me, I'm flying the way there. That this class can be serialized to and from a file in a binary or text format. And then what we can do in a question bank is, well, we can declare that a question bank has a lot of questions. So that can be an array of questions. So what we can do here is go public question, and we can do open and close square brackets, because this declares an array type. So this is an array of questions, and then we're going to call this questions. So that's going to be a field in the question bank scriptable object, which is an array of questions, and is going to be called questions. So I'm going to hit save on that. Now that we've brought back this type, you'll probably notice now question box is happy with that, because the type resolves and the variables, the members that we had before still exist. So it's very happy to accept an array of questions just like that. So all this code is still kind of okay. There's no problem there. And the only thing left now is to, well, we need to start building those questions up again. Oh, interesting. Oh, so it kept the, so this is because I changed the class, but Unity has managed to recognize that the meta file is the same for it. So what it has done, it has associated it with the new script called question bank, and then tried to serialize what it could from the file that was there. So it has actually reset the data in there. However, it has automatically assigned it thinking it should be a question bank. That's just because it's managed to figure out that the meta file was still the same as before. So it's just assigned that as such in the asset database. So yeah, it seems a bit weird what it's done there, but it's just what it's tried to do to resolve the problem, which is reasonable, I guess. So I think what I'm going to do is we're going to have two different banks. So the first bank we're going to be using is maths, and the second bank we're going to be using here is geography. There we go, maths and geography, or as it's been automatically alphabetized as geography and maths. So let's start adding a couple of questions here. I mean, you could also do NatWest and HSBC as well as your different banks. That is also a way you want to go. So let's start adding in some questions. So as you can see here, because it's an array, you can just specify a size for the array, just for how many elements you want. I'm just going to do two questions for the time being. So this is the geography bank. So what is the capital of Italy? And the answer, of course, is I. And what country am I broadcasting from? That would be England. But you can do whatever you want with the questions. Just simple question text and answer. And you can see also, when I was editing this text here, Unity is quite clever at realizing that with the first field, if it is a text field, so the first field in our question class is a text field, a string field, then it assumes that that is going to be used as a sort of name for the data. So what it does is then it automatically populates this drop down with that text. So now you can just see at a glance what the questions are without actually having to see what the answers are, which is quite nice actually. I do like Unity for that, for the little shortcut that it just assumes that the first text field it sees is a sort of name field. And in this case, it sort of is. Let's go to the maths pack, and we'll add in 2 questions for this. What is 2 plus 2? Yeah, 4, I guess. And what do we want to do? What do we want to do for the other maths question? 22, obviously. I mean, that's a different kind of, that's a concatenation rather than a addition, I suppose. Yeah. What is 2 plus 2? And what quiz? What is the test question? Test question squared. Oh, excuse me. Squared. And that is going to be 42 times by 42. Now, it doesn't do the maths for you, unfortunately. If only it could do the maths for you. It's 1,764, which I couldn't remember off the top of my head, but it's that. So I do it in dual. Oh, it's a test question squared. So that's going to be our banks there. Yep, 1764 is correct. Now, the thing left to do is on our question box is that it is trying to assign these questions, but it's not been able to do so. Because we need to change this variable, this member of question box, to instead of being an array of questions, it actually wants to be a reference to a question bank. So we're going to call this public question bank of questions. If that was an int field, could you have input an equation into it and have it evaluated for you? With some basic operations, yes. Int fields, float fields, they all do a calculation. For example, if we look at the, let's say this transform up here, this transform with a 0, we can go, that is equal to 1 plus 18 minus 35, and it calculates that for you as minus 16. So it is actually quite clever that you can actually do some very basic calculations in these numerical fields, and it works it out for you. So if you know that, oh, it's this number, but I need it scaled up by 10%, then you just go times 1.1, and it scales that value up by 10% for you. It's very nice. Yep, Unity's shouting at me at the bottom here with the red text saying, you've done stuff that's wrong. That's because we've not fixed up this reference yet. Because we've referenced the question bank type. However, it now needs to go one level deeper because the actual questions are in a field called questions inside of the question bank object. So we just need to adjust this here. You know, I might call this the question bank just to avoid any confusion. So at the top of question box, we now have public question bank, and then in here we're then going to change this to say question bank dot questions dot length, and then question bank dot questions, the array accessor of that dot question text, and question bank dot questions array accessor of dot answer text. If you're looking at this thinking, oh, there's a lot of sort of very similar code going on here and here, then okay, fair enough. The compiler's probably going to be clever enough to figure out that this is the same thing under the hood and pre-optimize it for you. But if you're seeing this kind of thing and thinking that it doesn't look too great, then you can, of course, do question equals all of this here and sort of pre-prepare it into a variable, local variable for yourself, and then do question.question text and question.answer text like that. So it makes it slightly tidier, so you're only seemingly accessing that array the once, and then reusing the variable multiple times. Was going to ask if you could use a with in Unity to remove the headers. What do you mean remove the headers in this case, Liswitz? What do you mean in that case? Don't know exactly. Oh, just like I did. Oh, right. Just like I did. Okay, fair enough. So yeah, that's, you can do that kind of thing, and then we just, then hopefully it resolves it all. Name questions do not exist in the current context. I've not hit the save button. Always hit the save button, folks. Then when you hit save, then it goes question bank. We don't know what the question bank is. So let's say it's going to use the geography bank. Let's hit the save button there. Save and save, often and save, absolutely. And let's bring back the old stuff. So I'm going to hide away the timer things and then bring back the old stuff that we had before. So this is what we had 2 episodes ago. And let's reveal the next question. And hopefully, with us using the geography bank, we should be seeing what is the capital of Italy as our question, just like that. And let's reveal the answer as I. That is the capital of Italy. And then the other one is, what country am I broadcasting from? The answer, of course, is England. Just like that. And then you can keep going through like that and like that. Okay. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Now, what if, because we're sort of going through the questions one by one, what if you wanted to sort of randomly pick from the questions so that you could sort of pick from any question anywhere in the bank randomly and then keep going like that, so you get to see a sort of random mix of questions rather than just the order you wrote them in? Well, you're just basically changing what this question index variable is here. At the moment, we're just incrementing by 1, and then we're doing the modulo operation to wrap it around so it's always within the range of 0 to the length of that questions array minus 1. But what we can easily do is just change this to do a random number. So we can do random.range and then give it a range of numbers with the int max. So the first number we can accept is a 0. And notice here in the documentation that the minimum is an inclusive value, maximum is an exclusive value. That means go up nearly to this number, but not exactly this number. So for an integer, it's like 1 before that number. I.e., in this case, you can just give it the length of the array, and it works out that the actual range of values you can generate is between 0 and the length minus 1. It's quite nice that they have done that for you. So you just give it the length of the array, and it works out that it's an exclusive value. So it's just 1 less than that. So you could just do that. Question index is a random range of that, and that will randomly pick from your bank. Now, obviously, we only have a bank of 2 questions, so each time you pick is going to be a 50-50, as it were, because it's not going to remember which questions you've seen. Well, capital Italy. It's gone with that one, and the next one it's going with is it's picked the same question this time round, 50-50, and then it's now gone for the other one. But this is all just random picking now instead of going in sequential order. That might be what you want to do. And then here we have the problem of duplicates, as Yellowtail is indicating. Yes, so if you wanted to avoid this from happening, you would need to have some way of remembering what questions you've seen so far, or alternatively, you can actually do it a different way and have sort of a randomized list of numbers ahead of time, and then use that. So instead of randomly picking each time, what you can do instead is ahead of time create yourself a list to say what the question order will be, and then you'll be able to do that. However, the list, C# list does not have a random. Does it have shuffle by default? Or is that one of the extension methods? Now, I have provided extension methods, so we can probably just use that for the time being. Okay, I've provided extension methods for this purpose anyway. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a private list. This is probably the first time we've used a list, but list is essentially an array, except you can dynamically increase or decrease its length throughout the process. So private list of int, because we're going to be storing indices into this question index array, and we're going to call this the question order. I think we're going to call it the question order, and we're going to start out by declaring no, we're just going to start out by doing null. We don't need to have it defined just there right yet, because we're going to populate it in start. I'm going to use a simple system to do this. So what we're going to do then is, we're going to have the question bank assigned. So what we can do is go enumerable.range. Now this is starting to get into the world of what's called sort of link, system.link, LINQ up here. It's sort of like the query language of .NET. And what enumerable.range allows you to do is generate an enumerable object, so something that can enumerate values. And we're going to generate it in the range of from a number to a certain other number by count. So what we're going to do is going to create enumerable.range in the range of 0 to the question bank dot questions.length. This will create an enumerable in the range of 0 up to the length, but obviously that's the count rather than up to that. So again, it'll be 0 to that number minus 1. And then we're going to shuffle them. This is provided from a class that I gave you at the beginning of the project called IEnumerable extension. So this is not actually part of the language straight off the bat. This is a helper part of the class, helper part of the thing. And all shuffle does is it takes any sort of enumerable object, so it could be an array, could be a list, could be this range thing that we've generated here, and it just shuffles the order that they're in. And then all we do after that is go dot to list to convert this enumerable into a list object of integers. And you'll notice we haven't actually assigned it to anything, so at the beginning of the line we go question order equals that, and then end the line with a semicolon. Then this, what looks like a fairly long line, actually is pretty concise. It generates us a series of numbers, series of indices from 0 up to the length of the array minus 1, shuffles them about, and then converts it into a list called question order. So that means now we have a list of indices that we can work with. So now we've got that, we can start changing how show next question works. The first thing we need to check is to see if we still have some questions in this question order to reveal. So long as question order dot count is different to length. So I don't quite know why .NET decided they wanted to have different words for these things, but for an array use .length, and for lists and other such type things you use count. It's weird that they have two different words for this, basically the same kind of property, but yeah, they have done. So you have to be careful about that. .length for arrays, .count for lists and other such collections that aren't arrays. So if the question order .count is greater than 0, because what we're going to be doing is actually removing entries from this list as we go along. So we're going to be sort of looking at the list, looking at what is at the first element of that index, that list, take that number and then literally take it out of the list so that it no longer exists. So we're just going to keep doing that until we remove all of the elements in that list, at which point we reset the order and we reshuffle them, because that's what we're going to do at this point. Now this you could change to do something else, like switch to a new bank or do something else in that case. But what we do here, if question order.count is 0, so as long as we still have some indexes to grab from our question order, then let's get it. So question index becomes that number. Question index equals question order at that front index, at index 0. And then once we have grabbed it, we then need to remove it from the list. So go question order dot remove at. Be careful not to use remove, because otherwise you'll be trying to remove this item, which I mean you could do. You could remove with question index, but we could instead do remove at to say we actually want to remove at a particular index, not a particular item, and we want to remove it at index 0. So what this does is, if there are indices still to grab, then grab the first one in the list and then remove it from that list at that index. However, if there is not, then we need to shuffle it again. In fact, I should have probably done this a better way, because we're always going to be picking the first one anyway. So what we're actually going to do in this case is instead, this will always happen. So we're actually going to put this down here out the way, because that's always going to happen. But what we're going to do here is change this condition to say if it is equal to 0, i.e. there are no more questions, then we want to do this, like that. So if question order dot count is 0, so there are no more questions to grab, then generate the order of questions again at that point. Then we grab an index at the first point in that list, and then remove it at that point in the list. So 500 questions, are we making the prize one of those Gwyneth Paltrow candles? Oh god, no we are not, Mai. No we are not, thank you very much. I don't even know what the prize is really going to be for that, to be honest. My gratitude for you being able to play, I guess. So yes, what this will do is generate an order for the questions to appear in, play through them, and then once we've run out of questions to go through, it then generates another order again. As I say, we only have 2 questions at each time, so it's going to go for the second question this time as England, then it's going to go to the capital of Italy, and at this point it should now reset because we only have the 2 questions, so it will now regenerate the order, and it's going to start with this one again, and then capital Italy again, and then it's going to regenerate again. What is the capital of Italy now? It's gone with the first question, and then going with country of broadcast, which is England. So it now generates the order each time, like that. I don't know if I'm going to give in. I have standards. I have standards. Okay, so that is a way of changing that script so that it is now a bank question, it's not just one question on its own, and also how you can pick at different questions in the question bank. So either going in order like we had before, or doing just random picks, or doing a shuffled pick that we have just done now. So what we're doing here is basically like shuffling a deck of cards, and then we're revealing the questions as we go through the deck. Whereas the other one, where we're just doing a random dot range, it's just literally pick that card, that goes back into the deck again, pick that card, and it might be exactly the same one. That makes sense to everyone? Does that make sense? Anyone have any questions on that? Anyone have any questions on the question banks and this random picking malarkey? I am going a bit faster again than I have been in previous streams, because I'm presuming you have a bit more knowledge on the language now. You're getting some sequences that should be impossible. I suspect you've made an error. I've made an error somewhere. What have you got at the moment, Matt? What have you got currently in your code?
I'm going to love this.
Well, what you're actually doing is what it is, the random dot range from before is actually just rolling an unweighted die. Yeah, it's actually that comparison. Yeah, so it is picking a card from a deck and keeping the deck preserved until you remove all the cards from said deck, or just rolling a die each time, or tossing a coin in this case because we only had 2 options. Yeah, I'll be interested to see what you've got at the moment, Matt, in terms of your code. Feel free to share it in the Unity Workshop channel. You don't see any discrepancies in what you have written. Should just be all of this, as far as I can tell. Have you made certain that this condition here is an equals 0? Because if that is greater than 0 and you still have more than 1, then it'll always keep reshuffling. That's the only thing I'm thinking of coming to mind there. If you do not have an equals 0, be careful that is 2 equal signs together. I mean, it shouldn't allow you to do it as it shouldn't allow it as a single equal sign anyway, because this is a getter only. You're getting duplicates as early as question 2. Okay. Well, what we can do if you're using Visual Studio is you can use the debugger to figure out what's going on. So if you want to do that, yeah, did you put it in start or did you put it in update? That's also a good call. Yeah, did you put this block in the start method or did you put it in the update method? If you put it in the update, it's going to keep shuffling every frame. It is in the start. Okay. So what we can use is the debugger to figure out what is going on. So if you wanted to do that, click the attach to Unity button at the top, and hopefully it will attach to Unity itself. And then you can start putting in some breakpoints, as they're called. So you see this light grey column here. You can click in there to create a breakpoint. That's what this red blob is and this red line. So it will, when you run through the game, it will stop at these breakpoints so you can figure out what is going on at that point. And then you can start using some of the operations in the debug, drop down here to step into things or step over things just to sort of see what's going on. So you can use breakpoints to figure out why it is doing what it is doing. And you'll be able to hit the continue button to continue from there. Hopefully it shouldn't be too bad, but yeah, it should theoretically do the right thing. I mean, I'll demonstrate it with mine just to make certain. Enable debugging for this session. Yes. Oh yeah, that's a thing that 2020 has introduced, which it wasn't in previous ones. Is it actually has two different play modes in the Unity editor. It now has a debug mode and a release mode in the actual editor, which it didn't have before. It was always presumed to be debug mode if you're in the editor. So I'm just going to play it myself and just see what it does. So I'm now attached to this. So when I hit next question, it comes into here. We have a question order count of 2, so it's not going to reshuffle. Going to pick it at that index and then remove it. So now question order only has 1 element left in it, and we are using question index 1. Okay, we play that question out. Next one. We come through again, we still have 1 left in the list, so we're going to grab it and remove it. Now we have 0, but we've not hit the condition yet. Reveal and hide. As we now come round for the next time round, now count is 0, so question order is now going to get equals to that's all madness, and it has now done that, and then it continues on. So yeah, it should be doing the right thing. I've just demonstrated as such that in my code it does do the right thing. If you're finding an exception though, do watch out in your console. If you're receiving an exception somewhere, like a null reference or something like that, then it will stop the code from running from that point onwards and won't actually run any more code. So if you're hitting an exception, that might be causing it to have a bit of a mare as well. Go on, I'll try to multitask. Okay, well, what I was going to be moving on to now is moving on to loading data from a sort of external file. So rather than creating a scriptable object to do this, which, you know, it works okay for this setup, but not every setup works out well with doing this scriptable object stuff. So what we're actually going to be doing now is starting to work with a CSV file. CSV stands for comma separated variable, and it's sort of a very basic way of storing tabulated data. If you've used Excel before, you might have seen it mentioned. Alongside it's the XLSX format. There's also the CSV format. Don't worry, we all feel like that when we find stupid bugs sometimes, Matt. But yeah, I'm curious to know exactly what it was that you had found. But yeah, we're going to be loading in data from a CSV file, which then makes it really easy to create lots of questions at once in a separate editor, like a separate thing like Excel or LibreOffice Calc, something like that. Oh yeah. Oh, you still had that line. You still had, just out of curiosity, yeah, you probably still had question index equals random dot range. You probably still had that line there, didn't you? Like that. Yep. There you go. So yeah, be careful about what extra lines you still have. There we go. Got it sorted at least. Okay. So yeah, CSV files. Like I say, they're really, really good to work with in Excel. So you could just sort of have an Excel file, and then once you need to export it to the game, you then just export it as a CSV file, and then you're all good and going. And there should be a really easy way of working with them. And there is a nice plugin called CSV Helper that we'll be using in a moment to do it. What I need to do though is I need to actually export that package and then give it to you guys, because you do not have it at the moment. So let me quickly do that for you. Let's go with none, and let's give you the CSV Helper, export, and we're going to export this Unity package to our downloads folder as CSV Helper. Okay, that is now there, and I'm going to drop this into the Unity Workshop channel on my Discord. And with that file, all you'll need to do is actually open it up. So long as you've got a Unity open, and then you open up that file, it should do the rest for you and figure out that you want to import a plugin. So just click that. It goes, I want to import a asset package. Click that, and then it should appear. And then you should then have a folder called CSV Helper in the right place. Yes, and getting to a break point is also good to know as well for when you get to get really into the debugging. When rewriting code, make sure you remove all the unnecessary code. It may create too many bugs. It's a very optimistic view on the real world of programming, that Yellowtail. Unfortunately, when you work in production environments. Well, not production environments, but when you work in environments that have a lot of code in them, then it's very difficult to delete code like that, because it's still somehow necessary to have it there. Like we've got game projects going on that's probably got like 10% dead code in there, but I daren't touch any of it. Because some of it might be referenced by a Unity event and it doesn't tell you it is. Some of it might just be there because we had an old game mode that we don't have anymore, but we're going to keep it around anyway. It's just a lot of dead code sitting in our code base, but we daren't touch it because risk. Because risk. Anyway, I'm going to diverge from that. As Pop Run Code is saying, yeah, 99 lines of bug in the code, 9 lines of bugs. Take one down, compile it around, and 137 lines of bugs in the code, yes. Or like your work multiple databases, massive data, there's also that as well, yeah. And yeah, that is the worst kind of working, is when you don't know why it works. Right, anyway, I'm going to create myself a simple database, a flat database for some questions. And I'm using LibreOffice Calc because it is open source and free, rather than Excel, which you have to pay for. So for a CSV file, what we're going to need is a header row to say what the titles of each row are each column are going to be, and then just have the data following that. So we're going to have, we're going to have ID. Because why not have an ID number just to be really effective like that? So we're going to have an ID, then we're going to have a question, and then we're going to have an answer. Now at this point, if you want to do multiple choice questions or something, then obviously by all means add more add more columns as you need. Evening, well, it's not quite evening yet, Egg. It's late afternoon, sort of dark and grey outside, but yeah. Hello there, Egg. Hope you're doing well. How's your day been? So yeah, we've got ID, question, and answer that we're going to have in our CSV. So very simple. If you wanted to have more columns, then by all means, add more columns at this point. You've been going from 6 a.m. though, so yeah, that's fair enough that it does feel more like evening to you. So ID we're going to have is just going to be some numerical thing. Just like that. We're going to have 10 questions in this, and then... You know what, chat, while you're there, can you just think of me some really simple questions and answers, please? Just very, very simple. They do not have to be like the biggest things in the world. They can even be joke answers. Just something to populate 10 questions with. Who gifted the US the Statue of Liberty? Let's unformat text paste that. We know, of course, that is Canada. What question number is this? We're going to paste special that, of course. That is 3 minus 1. What are birds? I mean, what even are birds? What even are birds? Is that going to be our answer? What is the Roman numeral for 500? What is the Roman numeral for 500? Okay, we don't actually have a factual answer in there. What is Joss? What even is Joss? Oh, I missed a quotation mark. Let's get rid of that. What is Joss? Joss is life. What is Whiskers the queen of? Everything in this domain. Let's just stretch that a bit. Explain the... Do we have an answer for that though, Matt? Explain the Australia-Hungarian Imperial Palace design. Use no fewer than 500 words. Use both sides of paper. Do not use an E. 25 marks. Oh, I can't even say help because that has an E. Help! Any other fakey questions that we want in here? We've got 3 more to fill in here. Who created Minecraft? Do I have a snarky response for Notch or not? Oh yeah, that thing that's all the rage on mobile phone screens these days. There you go, there's a snarky response for Notch. Are you not entertained? Clearly not. Who is the imposter? Blue is clearly sus. Is that sus with 1 S or 2 S's? I could never figure out if it should be that. I mean, we're going to say double S there. So there you go. Who's the imposter? Blue's clearly sus. Okay, 1 S then. 1 S then. Okay, so those are going to be our 10 questions in our fakey question bank. So, who gifted the US the Statue of Liberty? That was Canada. What question number is this? It's 3 minus 1. What are birds? I mean, what even are birds? What is the Roman numeral 500? We actually have a factual answer for that. It's D. What is Joss? Joss is life. What is Whiskers the queen of? Everything in this domain. Explain the Australia-Hungarian Imperial Palace design. Use no fewer than 500 words. Use both sides of paper. Do not use an E. 25 marks. Help. Who created Minecraft? That's that thing that's all the rage on mobile phone screens these days. Are you not entertained? Clearly not. And who is the imposter? Blue is clearly sus. Okay, so those are going to be our 10 questions. And we're just going to export that out as a CSV file now. So let's hit save. And let's go down to text CSV. And that's some spoilers for people's packs that we have for Outright. Let's go into programming, go into Unity Workshop. Hello there, Ben. Welcome. How are you doing this afternoon? Hope everything's good for you today. So we're actually going to go into the game folder. We're going to go into the questions folder, and we're going to call this the real questions, or real questions. So the thing to be careful about here is how to save the file, just in case. We'll save it out as Unicode UTF-8 because that does work. The field delimiter must be a comma for it to be comma separated variables. There are different variants out there, so like tab would be a tab separated variable or a TSV file. Space is a space separated file, which makes it really difficult to do that properly. But we're going to use commas, because commas work, and that is what a CSV file is commas. String delimiter using just a standard quote mark will work in this case, because that is sort of the standard for a CSV. Save the cell content as shown and quote all text cells. This is just makes it so everything that is a text entry definitely gets escaped correctly as a text entry. So Unicode, comma separated with string delimiter and quote all the text cells just to be sure. Click OK, and that will save that out as a CSV file in our assets. So if we go into the game folder, into the questions, we now have this file. And for those that did not know, a CSV file is literally just a text file. So let me just open that up in a text editor. Try and open it in a text editor that you do not get to see the contents of. And just drop that in. There it is. That's literally a CSV file. It's just text that's formatted in a specific way. So we have this header row here, and then these are all the different content rows. Just like that. Okay, so that is how a CSV file works. Obviously, you can just add more questions to that if you want, and I'm even going to quickly share that with everyone so that you can have that if you want. So let me just drop that into the Discord. There you go. There's some real questions.csv. Which export was that? So I'm using LibreOffice Calc. I'm actually just doing a save. I'm not even doing an export. In LibreOffice Calc, it's actually a save operation rather than an export operation, even though this does lose all of the visual formatting of it. But it's just as in save rather than export on LibreOffice Calc. But on Excel, it probably is an export command rather than just a save. What whiskers? You just had food. I literally fed you 15 minutes before the stream. I know, it's a hard life, isn't it? So, now we need to get this game loading some CSV data. So let's do that. Now the question is, do we want to keep our old question bank stuff, or do we just want to scrap that and just go back to go into CSV loading instead? Because this will just change completely at that point. We'll no longer have a question bank per se, because the bank is actually the file itself. I think I'm going to leave this as is, because we can just add the CSV loading wherever we want anyway. And it will just end up being a question array now rather than this question bank. So we're going to do this in the question box script. And we're now going to put this back to where it was with a question array. So question array questions back to where we were. And then that means we're going to be changing some bits of these codes. So in the start method, that becomes that. In the next question, that becomes that. And that becomes that. So now we're disassociating from question bank, but we're still going to be using the question type to store our questions going forward. And we're going to be actually populating this array in a moment from the CSV data. So here, this will actually be not right yet, because questions we haven't actually populated yet. So let's start actually putting some questions into this questions array. Do we want this to be an array still? No. This wants to be a list now, because we're going to be adding questions to it from the code rather than just making this array. So I'm actually going to change this to be a list of question type questions instead, because that's going to make it better and easier for adding. That does mean, as I mentioned before, we need to change the word from length to count, because they're different words. I don't know why they are. They really should be the same word for basically the same function in different collections, but they are different words. So they add dot count instead of dot length. Okay, and now we're going to start adding in the code to load in the CSV data. This is where I'm referring back to my code for outright, just to make sure I'm doing everything correctly here. So to do this, first of all, we need to initialize this list because we haven't actually assigned it to anything here. This could theoretically be null here. So we're going to start off with a basic list. So questions is equal to a new list. This is probably the first time we've actually used the new keyword as well. So what the new keyword does is create a new object, and we're specifying the type of object that we want to create as new. For numbers like integers and floats, you don't need to add a new because they're not really an object. They are just a value. Similarly for strings, you don't have to do a new string. You can just use the string literals and it figures that's what you actually mean by that. Okay. And then we go into starting to use some extra special statements that we have not used before and are very specific to the .NET family. So we're going to create a using statement, but inside of this method. Now we've used using statements at the top here to bring in some namespaces, but now we're actually going to be using it to do something else. We're actually going to control the lifetime of an object using it. Using in this particular context, Matt, will be done for garbage collection, yes. Because we'll be using something called a disposable object, and disposable objects will only go away if you tell them to do so, or you use a using statement to control the lifetime of that object. Whiskers, stop sniffing for the treats. Stop it. You're being very naughty. Now I know. Stop being naughty. You'll get some treats later, don't worry. So anyway, using, and we're going to do text reader, which means we need to bring in system.io. So by adding that in means we now have system.io at the top here. So be sure you do have that at the top to make this work. Using text reader, I'm going to call it a reader, equals a new string reader. And we need to give it a thing. Now we haven't actually got anywhere here now that references that file. So what we actually need to do is, if I look at my code again, we need to reference it by a text asset. So actually at the top here we need a public text asset, and this is going to be our question CSV. So this is what we'll assign to in a moment, the CSV file, and it is a text asset according to Unity. So from that, so we now have that declared up here, line 14, and we're now going to access that here on line 49. And looking back at my notes again, what we do is we go question CSV dot text. So what this does is this will return all of the text from that text asset. So all of the text from the CSV file, because we saw earlier that CSV is just a text file. Okay. And we're also going to do another using statement. So an extra using statement. This time we're now going to be using the CSV reader. So using CSV reader, and by including that, I have then brought in this using statement called using CSV helper. So make certain you have that at the top of the file, now that we have access to the CSV reader itself. And I'm going to call this one CSV to differentiate from being the text reader, equals new CSV reader, so another new statement, so creating new object. And for this, we want to give it the reader, so we're giving it this text reader object. And we're also going to specify the culture info as well. So culture info dot invariant culture. Now, this last bit really only it only matters if you are importing the CSV file from someone in a different locale. So if you're thinking like numbers, how they are declared differently in different regions. So here in the UK, our 1000 separator is a comma and our radix point is a dot. In the rest, pretty much the rest of Europe, it's the other way around, where they use a dot for the 1000 separator and a comma for the radix point. There's also in India, instead of having 1000 separators, they have craw and lac separators. The Polish have a different kind of 1000 separator rule as well, I believe, as well. Then, of course, you've got the Japanese, which don't do 1000 separators, they do it in a very different way. All sorts of crazy stuff like that. You say it makes no sense, though, but that's just because you're not used to it, Egg. That you're just not used to that. You have to realise they have gotten used to that because that's the way the way it was for them. If you had grown up in that environment, then you would have a perfect argument to say that makes perfect sense to me. It's just different. Like Japanese work in 10,000s rather than just thousands. It's an interesting system. Trying to figure out that a million means 110,000 over there. Anyway, for culture invariant culture, that just means sort of we don't really care about the culture here. We're just going to go import it. And now we're going to bring in the open and close braces here. Now, this by this closing brace here, both of these objects here, Reader and CSV, will be disposed of. That, like I've mentioned earlier, these are disposable objects, and the only way to get rid of the memory that they hold on to is to correctly dispose of them. In most of the language that you'll be dealing with in Unity, you don't need to care about memory management because it will sort of do it for you in the background using something called garbage collection. However, with disposable objects like these, you do have to be careful because otherwise they will hold on to the memory and will never relinquish it until you say dispose, or doing this sort of using statement instead. Well, what I'm using here is exactly what I use for Outright because those are just CSV files and it works really well for that. But for my question database stuff, yeah, it's very different again. I use Newtonsoft JSON deserialization instead, which is a slightly different way of doing it. Did I need to include something for culture info? Possibly. That might be system... And there you go. System globalization. Sorry, yes, that was needed as well. Completely forgot about that one. So, yeah. Watch out there for using system.globalization with a Z because US spelling in majority of .NET. So you'll need that to make culture info resolve. Sorry about that, Matt. Okay, now that we are with a CSV reader object, let's start reading it. And surprisingly, the first thing we need to do is csv.read. That's the first thing we need to do, just literally read the file. And then, once we've done a read operation, we then need to read the header. So what the CSV reader does is we actually read it line by line. This tells us to read the first line, and then this tells the system to interpret that line that we have just read as the header line. So in a CSV, you technically could have multiple different header lines and they work in different ways. But that starts to get a bit messy when you do that. So in this case, if you just presume that the first line is always a header line, then you just do this, read the first line and then interpret it as a header, then it'll work. So the header that we had before, yes, is ID, question and answer. I'm just going to highlight it for here, but obviously highlighting doesn't work in CSV files. It doesn't export as that. So it reads this, and we've interpreted that line specifically as a header line. We haven't actually done any reading of data yet. Well, it doesn't really skip it because it has to read it, Egg, to be able to interpret what that header really means. Because what we're going to be using is we're going to be using these header names to read the data from the next set of rows. So once we've done that, now we read all of the other lines. And to do that, we're going to create a while loop. So what a while loop does is it will continue doing the thing until a certain condition reaches false. So what we're going to do is do csv.read, which will then mean read the next line, and this method actually returns a Boolean value. So if it returns true, then it means it read the line successfully. If it returns false, that means it did not read the line successfully, which generally means it's reached the end of the file. There are probably other cases where it might not be that, but we're just going to keep the code fairly simple to start with, and then maybe deal with error checking afterwards. So this is csv.read, and then open and close parentheses. So everything in this loop, it will keep looping through this until it has stopped reading lines. Yes, it will read a blank line through egg. It is a very dumb system, this. So if we had an extra line here, there was a blank line, it will read that and say, yeah, that's a line that we've read. Cool. But when you try and get the values out of it, it will go, I don't know what you mean, because it's a blank line. So for the purposes of this particular scenario, I would say don't have any blank lines in the code, in the CSV file, otherwise it might fall over. You can probably check for CSV properties about it. Let me see if we can do... You can do things called try get field to do that kind of thing. Well, we're reading it in order in this case, yes. We're reading it in order as it is in order here. Was going to say no end of file flag to work with. No, not really, no. I mean, CSV Reader is just a very basic, very simple CSV Reader. There's nothing really to worry about that. All you need to worry about is if the header is, if the read operation worked or not. That's literally it. They basically simplify it. If you want to get really into it, then find another CSV plugin or write it manually. But CSV Reader on its own is a very simple system that if you've got a file that does work in the right format, then it just works and you can't complain with it. So while CSV.read, so what we then need to do is we need to start creating a question. So we're going to create a new question object for each row that we read. So question equals new question. So this is a empty question, and if you look at the contents of that, that means a question text and answer text that we have not assigned to it yet. And then what we're going to do is CSV dot get field, and we need to give it a type as well so that it casts it correctly. So we're going to do CSV get field of type string, and we're going to get at, let's say, question. So we're going to get the question entry, and we're going to assign that to be the question text in our question object. So question dot question text is equal to all of that. So what this does, let's break down that line again. So question dot question text. So we want to set the question text of this new question object that we've created, and to that we are getting the value of getting the field of the row that we have just read, and we're going to cast it to this string type, so convert it to a string type so that it works with this particular field. And we're going to get the field that is sitting under the question column. So imagine we have just read this row here. Doing get field of question means we're going to be getting this particular field here. So the contents of this will return, theoretically in this case, who gifted the US the Statue of Liberty, and that will get assigned to the question text. And similarly, we can do another thing. So question.answer text is csv.getField of type string, and give it the answer column to do that. So question.answer text equals csv.getField of type string, and getting it under the answer column. And then once we have done that, we then need to add this question to our questions list up here. And to do that, we go questions.add. This is the convenience of a list type, is that allows you to just add to it whenever you want. And then we're going to add this new question object, like that. So what this entire block does is starts from an empty questions list, reads a file, takes that data from that read file into a CSV reader. We then read the first row and we read it as if it is a header. And then for every other row in the CSV file, we create a new question object, and then we get out the question data assign to the question text of this question object, read out the answer, assign it to the answer text value of this question object, and then add this question object to our questions list. And if you do all of that, and then it generates the order of the questions that we will see, theoretically, everything should be good. So let's go into Unity and see what it does. See what it has said. Do we have any errors? We do not have any compile errors. That is good to see. And if we go to the question box, we should now have a question CSV field to fill out. And we're going to give it, well, you can see you can actually specify a script file because they are text files. But the one we want is real questions. So let's quickly find for that. You can also do a search by name here. So you can see this top box here. You can actually type in here to filter by name. So search the word real and we get real questions. Double click that. That sets that as question CSV. I'm going to go save and then save project. Then hit the play button. And hopefully, if all has gone well, look at that. Our questions list in the editor has been populated and we can actually see all of the 10 questions. And we can actually drill down and see what the values are. And it seems to have read everything correctly, which is really good to see. Now let's see what it does when we go for the next question, because it should shuffle the order that we see these questions in, but we should see each one only once until we then reshuffle everything. So, first one we get is who created Minecraft, which is this one down here. Of course, the answer being is that thing that's all the rage on mobile phone screens these days. The next one we're going to see is who gifted the Statue of Liberty, which we all know is Canada. Then what is Joss, which is obviously life. Then are you not entertained? Clearly not. Then the next one, what is Whiskers the queen of? There is that question. Of course, everything in this domain. Then what is the Roman numeral for 500? The only factual answer up on the board here is D. Then what are birds? I mean, what even are birds? Then who is the imposter? Blue is clearly sus. And we have two more questions we've not seen yet. There it is, the Australia-Hungarian Empirical Pass design. That is help. And then the last one we have not seen yet, which is what question number is this? Interestingly, we've seen this as the 10th question, although it is question number 2. Which is 3 minus 1. And now that we've seen all of the questions, it should then reshuffle everything and start from scratch. And it's reshuffled and it's picked that question instead. So there you go. All seems to have worked quite well. It did work, didn't it? Let me see if we can get it to appear again, because we did foreplan with the text that it should fit a lot of text just in case. Let's see if we get to it again. There we go, there it is. Yep. How far can that go? How far did we make it go on that one? Well, that is at font size 64, and we went all the way down to a possible minimum of 36, so we can actually go even further. There you go. That is about as small as it can get before it starts complaining, because that is now font size 36. Obviously, we can just change this size down to whatever size we want, so let's just go down to 10 size. Let's just keep going. Let's keep going. There you go. So yeah, it depends on how I fit, and then that's back to oh wow, that's back to 36 size. So is this the preface to resizing Wipeout? I guess so, yes. All work and no play makes Ash a dull boy. That's clearly it, Matt. Yep. There you go. Oh, so much fun you can have in Unity, eh? Let's reveal the answer. Of course, it is hell. So yeah, that's how you can read from a CSV file. And then, as I say, you can introduce different fields. If we wanted to read the ID field, for example, we can do that. So if we add in a new entry to our question class, that is the ID. Let's put the ID there. But no, we'll put the ID at the top. And then if we change our code in the question box to then read that, then we can just do question.id is csv.getField, and this one is going to get it as type of an integer because it is an integer value that we're storing in the ID, and all of these are integers, thankfully. And we just want to get the field ID. That's the one in the column called ID. So if we then play that and have a look at the question box, then you'll see it has now introduced those IDs. As you can see, now that the first field is not a text entry, it now doesn't do the clever thing of changing the collapsible header name. So if you wanted this to still be the preferred thing, I think you can change the priority of them. Can you change the priority, the ordering of them? Unity ordering of inspector properties. I think you can without having to reorder them in the code. Is there a way of doing it? If you do a custom editor, yes. Oh god, no. If you do a custom editor, then yes, you can. But I implore you, don't bother looking at that because it's a lot of pain. Okay. Are they case sensitive? Well, we can very quickly test that egg. Okay, I've just changed that to lowercase ID. Is it going to work now? Is it going to throw a wobble? Let's find out. And it has thrown a wobble. It's told me that field with name ID definitely does not exist. You can ignore missing fields by setting missing field found to null. So it tells you exactly why it went wrong. So yes, it is a case-sensitive search that it is looking for in this case. And also, if we were to, let's just say that we changed this to say 3A rather than 3 in real questions. I have saved this in the right place, haven't I? This is in-game questions. Okay. So just for example, let's just see what happens there. Now that it's going to try and parse that, as they say it, egg, yes, it is not an integer now. What's it going to do? What is it going to do? It's now told me, type converter exception, the conversion cannot be performed on text, saying 3A. So yes, it has thrown an exception and not continued. It's gotten as far as it can. It's loaded 2 of them in, but then it has stopped and could not load in the third one. So it's there as a bit of type validation. So if you import a CSV from someone else and you get an exception, then you know that there's something going wrong. Depends whether you want to try and handle the situation or not. With an ID field, I would feel that is a pretty catastrophic problem. So if it were to happen, then you can't do much about it. But on other fields that might be sort of like extra data that you might not necessarily need to have the information for, then instead of doing a get field, you can change that to do a try get field instead. So csv.try get field of type int. But this is done in a slightly different way. So instead of it returning the ID, this will return a boolean as to whether it was successful in doing so, and it returns the value as an out parameter. So instead, this could be written as if csv.tryGetField of type integer from ID as an out int ID. By the way, this kind of syntax is fairly recent to the C# language. Before that, you would have had to have declared the int earlier, but you can actually now declare the variable in line in the out parameter declaration. And you have to have the word out here because it is an out parameter and you have to specify it as such. So you can do this instead. If CSV try get field of integer ID out int ID, then question.id is that ID. So now what that will do in that particular case of the 3A scenario is it will just sort of casually move on and not do anything, and that ID will just be set to 0 theoretically. Yeah, it has set that ID to 0 because it's not done anything to it. 0 is the default value for an integer, and then it's set the question text and answer text. So if you want to be a bit more error handly, then use try get field instead of just get field. But get field will throw an exception, which you can handle with exception handling if you want to do it that way around. Either or, it's up to you, however you want to handle the exceptions you have in your particular game. Does that make sense to everyone? Does all of that make sense? I hope it does. So maybe like a hash or something in the document could throw wobbly as well. Well, if you're editing the text file manually, then yeah, it could throw a wobble. But in this exporter, it puts a quote mark around every single one of these fields. So even if I did this, even if I did that, even if I did that, even if I did select star from, it'll allow that. Even if I did that and put a quotation mark inside, oh, it's escaping it. It's doing the special quotation mark. I don't want it to do the special quotation mark. Stop doing the special quotation mark. I'm trying to demonstrate that you can put a regular quotation mark in there. How do you do that? Clear direct formatting? No, can't do that. Oh. Okay, let me copy one of those instead. We'll do a direct copy. And then paste. Oh, paste. Other paste. Oh, it's the freaking not paste. Paste special. I can't do unformatted text. Ugh. Okay, let's do it in here. Who created Minecraft? Question mark quote. And I'm gonna cut that. And then I can then do a paste special. And what? I can't do an unformatted text from there? What's it doing? Of course you can. Of course you can. There you go. Who created Minecraft? And it's got the right quotation mark in there now this time. So now that we have all these extra weird characters going on, will it be happy with that? Let's find out. Let's see how well CSV Reader has been written. So the closed squiggle has worked, the open square has worked, the closed squiggle has worked, the select star from has worked, and the closed quotation has worked. So it's done that all absolutely correctly. You'll probably see in the CSV file that it is slightly different now. Not like that. Yeah, you can see the contents here. What has it done with the quotation? Yeah, so it's done a escaped quotation. So it's done a double quote. Sounds stupid, I know. A double quote, but that just means escape it so that don't interpret it as closing the actual string. So this opens the string. Read. Am I at the end of the string? Nope, I've got another double quotation mark. So actually interpret that as a proper double quotation mark and then read as that. Is this the end? And then it sees a comma. Yes, that is the end. Okay. Is there anything to avoid like eacute or stuff? Well, all of those are encoded no problem using Unicode. So if I put in a eacute in that particular one, let me put in a something that's more readable. Not that apparently. 2-4. Let's put a divide sign in there. Heck, we can even put emoji in there as well. Let me find an emoji symbol. Trumpet emoji. Because it's all UTF-8 standard, you know. So let's put in a are you not trumpet entertained? There you go. And save that. Let's close that. Let me open it up so we can see what that looks like in. So this is what it actually looks like now in the CSV file. So we've got the divide sign, we've got the eacute, and we've got a trumpet emoji symbol in there because that's just part of Unicode standard. It just works in UTF-8 mode. The only thing that's limiting you is whether the text, the font assets that you've generated can support the character or not. And with modern TextMesh Pro, it will try its best to fill in any blanks that aren't defined in your font. So if we start looking... Well, actually, let me look at the question box to see the... does Unity render them properly? Because at some point they haven't rendered them properly. Yes, so Unity still in their inspector does not render emoji characters properly in their text fields. However, it is actually there if you go and use the caret and try and sort of jump and move through them. So we have, that's the space. The caret hasn't moved, but I've moved by another character, so that's the trumpet symbol. Then it's the space after the trumpet symbol, and then it's the E. So it is actually there, you just can't see it in the Unity rendering here, but that's just the inspector. It is still in the text. Let's just see if we can actually get there. So let me, let's go through some questions. What is Joss E acute? There's an E acute symbol there. What are birds? The division symbol is is already in this font, so that's already there. So let's just get to the trumpet symbol and see how far we get to that, because I don't believe the trumpet symbol will be in the font. Yeah, so there, that is as far as TextMesh Pro can take it so far. However, I have in the past been able to add in my own sprites to be able to support additional characters, additional emoji. So what you can actually do, and let's actually, you know what, I'm going to demonstrate that because I can do that. Let me get my doot symbol from somewhere. E by gum. Temp, stream media, Twitch emotes. I should have a doot somewhere. I do have a doot. Here is a doot. So let me copy my doot and copy that into my assets and put it into sprites. So we'll create a doot. So in the sprites, I now have myself a doot original. There is a doot original. We actually need to create a sprite asset for TextMesh Pro though. So what we need to do is go to Window, TextMesh Pro, and Sprite Importer. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do, actually. No, that's not what I want to do. Actually, I want to do it a different way. Actually, what I need to do is right-click, create TextMesh Pro sprite asset. That's what I wanted to do. There we go. So I need to create a sprite asset. And that should have created a sprite asset, but I do not see one. TextMesh Pro, what are you doing? Oh, this is stupid. Why is it not doing it? That's supposed to create a sprite asset and it's not doing so. TextMesh Pro, what are you doing? Why is that working? That should create a sprite asset and it's not doing so. A texture must first be selected. Oh, yeah. Read the console, folks. Read the console first. So what I need to do is actually have the doot original selected first, and then with that selected, do create TextMesh Pro sprite asset. There we go. There we go. So now we have a TextMesh Pro asset for doot original. And what we can do is change the Unicode endpoint for this character so that it is treated as if it is a Unicode character. So let me find the information for what emoji is. Let me find the actual endpoint code, the hexadecimal for it. Where are you? Trumpet emoji code point is 1F3BA. That is the endpoint for it. This is how I do it for Winning Lion's Egg. Yeah, absolutely. So what we do is we go to the sprite character table, and where it says Unicode 0xFFFE, change that to read as 1F3BA instead. So now that is the Unicode endpoint that should stand for, theoretically. That should be it. Let me press enter. Let me see if that does it. Okay, that has now set it as 1F3BA as the endpoint for that particular character. But what I need to also do is change the properties of TextMesh Pro so that it knows to read that particular sprite asset as an extra sprite. So what we need to do is go to TextMesh Pro, go to resources, and go to TMP settings. And then in here, we go... Oh, okay. You can't specify them there anymore. Interesting. Oh, but you can default them in the resources folder. I don't like that. Don't like that. Okay, we'll do it the other way around then. So the way I actually do them in Winning Lines is actually specify them on the text element. So what you can do is on the text element itself, so you're specifying the font, but you can also, in the extra settings, also specify sprite assets. So here we're going to specify Doot Original as an extra sprite asset. And that does mean now it'll try and reinterpret that as the Doot symbol for the trumpet emoji. If we play that through now, let's see what happens. Let's see, how do we go? Will it work? Okay, it has worked. You'll notice the positioning is a bit off, but it has worked. We can fix the sprite sheet so that it puts it in the right place though. So let me go back to the game, go to sprites, go to the Doot Original sprite sheet, and let's start adjusting the sprite positioning. So that's in the glyph table. And what we need to do is change some of these offsets. So the BX shouldn't be offset by 32. That should just be at 0. And I believe the BY is also the same, doesn't have to be shifted. Actually shifted the other way. So just shift it to wherever it feels most natural, I think. So in this case here, a BX of 0 and a BY of 52, and that has placed it at the right place where we actually want it to appear. And it will save that now from that point onwards. You'll notice that sprite atlases, well, a sprite sheet is actually should be done as a sprite atlas. So although I'm using just one image here, it's better that you have a big texture sheet that has lots of them on, and then you define different glyphs for each one of them. So you just have a big texture sheet with lots of different graphics on, and then you assign where each one is. That's how I do my Doots at the very least, is just have a very simple sprite sheet with just the one Doot symbol on. Have it point to the trumpet emoji Unicode endpoint, because then that makes sense. And it all works, just like that. Okay. Anybody else got any extra things they want to mention? Talk about any problems that people are having with CSVs? Any problems with any of this stuff? And I would also say we can have a break now if you want, or depends on if there's actually anything else anyone wants to talk about today, because I was actually only planning on doing up to CSV files, and we've just done that. So I've actually gone through this one a little quicker than I have done it previously. So yeah, this could be probably the end of the stream today, because I don't actually have anything else planned. So if anyone has got any ideas of what they want to play around with, then let me know. I don't have anything else planned. I'm more concerned about needing to get some stuff done on 500 questions, you see. So I'd be happy if it did end slightly shorter today. But if people do want any extra guidance on things, then do let me know. I'm here to help. That's why I'm doing these streams, is to help out for doing these game shows, these quiz shows in Unity. Even if it's something all the way back from episode 1, I can help you out on that. And if I'm getting a silence, then it probably means that no one wants to know anything. Quite enjoying the tunes. It's a good whole tone tune, that, wasn't it? Okay, that's good to hear. Well, you'll still be able to ask of help in the Unity Workshop channel if you need to during the week. If something goes wrong, like for some reason you have a CSV that doesn't seem to want to open properly anymore, or anything like that. And from the looks of things, it'll probably be the next time that we want to do a workshop, it's going to be, I need to ask you guys what you want me to do. What, you know, if there's any other things in a game show or a quiz show or something that you really want to see done in Unity and how to do it, then that's probably going to be what it's going to be. And also, sideline, I have 500 questions next week on Saturday, so I won't be doing workshop, surprisingly, next Saturday. I may not even do it the Saturday after, because that could be the end of the season, so it might be 3 weeks' time until we actually get another Unity Workshop episode done. I have a project I've been tinkering with derived from these, and CSV is a good next step, but I'm not at a stage where I need any new info. That's good to see. That's good to see. Good to hear. So I think then that's going to be it. Not much really. No, I'm not going to jump into that that element yet, Ben. Not just yet. I very much could do that, but I feel that's probably going to be a bit of a leap for a lot of people potentially, and also a lot of people may not want to even have it be so directly integrated either. So I'm leaving this as a open opportunity for you just making your own games rather than making it for other people, as it were. But yeah, it's certainly a suggestion for future, because I can definitely bring in some of my experience in that to do that. That's certainly a thing we could do in the future. So yeah, that's probably going to be it then. We're going to leave it there. Thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you very much for playing along and coding along. If you're watching in the VOD, then thank you for watching in the VOD. Hope you've found this very interesting and hopefully useful. As I say, if you've got any sorts of queries, then join me on the Discord. Go into the Unity Workshop channel and ask some questions there, and people will be able to answer them hopefully for you. And that's probably going to be it then. As I say, I won't be here for next week, or maybe even the week after, so it could be 3 weeks away until we get another Unity Workshop episode streamed. Next week is going to be a massive week for me, because we've got Deal Wednesday, and then possibly Stream Wednesday, possibly Stream Friday, and then the 500 question stream on Saturday. So lots of stuff happening. I've definitely got a deal on Tuesday. Definitely got the deal on Tuesday. That seems to be set in stone. And then whatever happens with the result of that, then there could be the dual grand final on Friday. There could theoretically be a duel on the grand final on Friday, depending on how schedules work. And then there'll be 500 questions, which would then be the actual season finale. So somehow magically has turned out to potentially be an actual finale for the season. But I'm not going to get my hopes up just yet. That's it. Can't think of anything else. Oh, that elbow popped. That was very nice. Stretch. Oh, all the stretch. Nothing else to say. Nothing else to say other than have a good weekend, everyone. And I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.